Against all odds, I managed to exceed my lofty expectations by actually getting a positive win rate at my second ever 2-day 40k event, the Winchester GT. You might be thinking that my channel name is no longer relevant, but just like last time I did well at an event, I was the lowest placed player with a positive win rate. Every time I seemingly do well, I still end up managing to do something badly, but at least that keeps my channel name relevant. In this video, I'll be going through all 5 of my games, highlighting what worked well, what worked not so well, and what didn't work at all. Before we get into it, firstly, subscribe, but more importantly, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Mark of Winchester Rogue Traders, the organizer of this event and other events in my local area. It's been great getting involved in more tournaments, and it's nice to have a regular event nearby. Through it, I've managed to get a ton of great games in, meet awesome new people, and allow me to get the most out of 40k, as well as a constant stream of content. No, that doesn't mean you get any of my ad revenue. My aim for these tournament recaps is not just to be used as a learning tool, although going through these games really does help in dissecting areas where I can improve, and there's a lot of those. But I also want these videos to encourage others to get out there and play some 40k. There's a lot of negativity around the competitive scene, but I've now played 19 games and I have not had a single issue with any of my opponents and have had nothing but fantastic games of 40k. Don't worry about the meta. Even the most competitive and best players are here to, first and foremost, have fun. Someone brought a Warhound Titan to this event. Did it do well? I don't know. Who cares? You know how everyone reacted when they saw the Warhound? They didn't scoff and go, oh, that isn't competitive. What are you doing? They went, wow, that's really cool. Hell yeah. Everyone is there to play the game we all like. And going to events like this is the easiest way to get games in. And the only way these events happen is because of people like Mark. If you're anywhere near Winchester, Mark runs tournaments regularly, and you can find them on BCP or on his website, which I'll link down below. He has another tournament coming up in Chichester that has plenty of spots open, and he also runs them in Teddington, wherever that is. This isn't sponsored or anything. I just want to spread the word to help support the community, but I'm sure you could find a very similar community in your local area, and you should go and support them. Right, it's time to get off my soapbox about competitive 4K so I can talk about competitive 40k. As in the games of competitive 40k, you know what I mean. This list is very similar to the list I took to the South Coast Super Major and the previous Winchester RTT. The bulk of the list is still the same, with nearly half of it still being Centurions in the same configuration as before. 2 lots of 3 Assault Centurions, 1 with Melter and 1 with Flamer. 2 lots of 3 and 1 lot of 6 Devastator Centurions, all with the same loadout of las cannons and missiles. 2 lots of Vanguard Veterans with Storm Shields, 1 lot of Jump Pack Intercessors, 2 lots of Incursors, and Shrike. There have been 2 key changes for this tournament. The first is swapping out the Phobos Lieutenant and everyone's favorite Tech Marine for a 5-man unit of heavy intercessors. These are the only battle line unit I had quick access to, so although regular intercessors would probably be just as good for cheaper, I also just think these guys are really cool, and that bulk makes them perfect candidates to keep my home objective safe. Toughness 6, 3 wounds are pretty much impervious to incidental pot shots. They're a good candidate for the Screaming Ravens, and can also benefit from mission rules that relate to battle line, something I've never had the privilege to have access to before. I found that the Phobos Lieutenant was okay, but not really doing enough to justify him being in a squad of what is meant to be fairly expendable incursors. And the Tech Marine definitely fits in a lot more with my lists that involve the Storm Raven and Dreadnought. And with this list now only having 1 vehicle, the Tech Marine doesn't really fit into what I'm trying to accomplish. That first change with the heavy intercessors I had at least got some use of before the event in a few practice games, but this second change has not been tested before. Kind of. Swapping out one of the repulsors for 3 Blade Guard with the Blade-driven Deep Judicia. I have used that combo before at the 2nd Tabletop Tactics League Day 2 limited success, but that was also with the Storm Raven combo. This list desperately needs something to get a foothold early, and so I'm bringing this squad back in for another go with some tough infiltrators. Previously, when I used them, I was playing them far too aggressively, infiltrating them far too deep up the board. So this time, my plan was to get them forward a little bit to block out an area of the board and give my scouting incursors more room to play with. And they can also get onto a no man's land objective and use a deadly prize to sticky up something immediately if the situation calls for it. The other difference between my previous outing with the Blade Guard and now is that I'm no longer starting all of my jump pack units in Deep Strike. In fact, in this tournament, I think I only put maybe 1 unit into reserves in a couple of games, and that was it. And they weren't my Deep Strike units. Otherwise, everything starts on the board. Shrike also is deployed on his own, leaving me with 3 fast units to get to board control and a small footprint lone operative to get up and down every turn to either screen or get some points. There were times that Shrike would go just 3 rounds up and down on the same spot over and over, which might seem like a waste of 100 points. However, in a turn where I draw a secondary that requires him, he more than makes up his points. I don't think he did a single point of damage, but he also doesn't need to, and being on his own frees up my other jump pack units to do the damage. Only having one repulsor also means that I'm potentially going to have some difficulty in moving around my assault centurions, but to be honest, I didn't really find that to be a concern. I can either start one of the units of assault centurions in strategic reserves to rapid ingress later, or I can keep them on the board and walk them up behind my front line for counter-punching potential. The lack of the second repulsor was not a concern, especially when those points were spent on possibly the MVP of the entire tournament. Speaking of MVPs, this video is sponsored by Stronghold, because I think they're the only company willing to put up with me making these stupid, completely absurd and ridiculous sponsor times. The Man Case 2.0 is fantastic. I have one and I use it all the time. It really tabletops on my Stronghold until I... If you want that same feeling, then you should get yourself some awesome terrain or an MDF carry case with adjustable trays for all of your minis of any size right now by going to tabletopstronghold.com. They have 30% off in their Memorial Day sale and free shipping as always to the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU. So once again, thank you Tabletop Stronghold for the continued support of the channel and sponsoring this video. Click on the link in my description if you're ready to... My first game was against Noah, who was a super nice guy. He had brought a Taktikal Brigade Orks list that was called "It was my birthday last week, so you have to let me win." Unfortunately for Noah, I'm a bit of a knob, so I wasn't about to let his birthday celebrations get in the way of me throwing 18 Centurions at that tide of green. I did still wish him a happy birthday though. I'm a bit of a knob, but not that much. Come on now. My previous experience of Orks at big events was... let's say quick. Whilst the more Dakka detachment was given the nerf hammer, Orks are still nasty customers, and Noah's Tactical Brigade still features some of those great datasheets. With a big block of flash kits, tank busters, beast snagger boys, and non-beast snagger boys loaded up in 5 trucks, with commandos, the Zog Grot Bomb, and lots of battle line storm boys there to quickly swamp the board with thick green bodies. Tactical Brigade basically gives Orks access to something similar to orders from Imperial Guard, and with 2 beast bosses and 3 big mechs, there's plenty of buffs to go around. The issue Noah is going to have is Centurions. His tank busters will be wounding on 3s, but without access to their rerolls, because Centurions count as infantry, and being damage 3, meaning you need to get multiple successful wounds per Centurion, he may have a tough time chewing through this many of them. At only AP 2, I'm still saving on a 4+, and if they don't get close, that goes to a 3+ due to the Vanguard Spearhead detachment. Things from the Tactical Brigade and a big mech can make that shooting a little bit more reliable, but it is still Orc shooting. The other option is flash kits, which are damage 2, so whilst it's still multiple successful wounds, there's no wasted damage. And with an enhancement, they can be led by a big mech in mega armor, which gives them rerolls to hit and the ability to bring models back. It is only strength 6 though, so wounding on 5s, but with 10 of them, that's 30 shots, 40 if they fire at the closest enemy. Weight of dice may be the name of the game here. Seeing this potential issue, Noah's plan is simple. Why try and kill the Centurions when you could just stop them from doing anything? Noah deployed all his trucks behind ruins, store boys ready to pounce with 1 unit in the sky ready to drop down later, and got the commandos infiltrating to block my potential screening from the incursors. I deployed my blade guard opposite to his commandos, hiding behind this ruin so I didn't get charged immediately, not being too concerned about any of the shooting that might come my way. Otherwise, I had a fairly aggressive deployment with my scouting incursors at the front, ready to try and block a tsunami of angry green muscle, with my repulsor and 6 devastating Centurions fairly close to the front edge of my deployment. Jump units are behind that line or at the back for a counter charge, with my Flamer Centurions in strategic reserves in the hope that I can find a nice space to drop down a lot of flamey goodness. As the mission was terraform and swift action, I wanted to make sure that Noah didn't get a chance to start those actions turn 1 and block me from stopping him. Noah gets the first turn roll-off and scouts the Zod Grot Bomb forward. I scouted only the incursors here on this left side. They were lambs to the slaughter, but I was hoping they'd be in a position where the commandos wouldn't be able to slip past them into my Centurions. If they get charged and die, I'd pick them up on the return volley. My other incursors just moved up a smidge to protect this ruin, ensuring that they couldn't be fought from the front side of the wall, but could still be caught from the sides. Noah goes all in with a turn 1 wah! And with it, he throws the Zod Grot Bomb at my big 6 Centurion squad, beast snaggers at my repulsor, and the commandos close into my incursors. He moves up both of his storm boys onto the side objectives in no man's land and tries to start terraforming them. He had a nice turn 1 draw with storm hostile objective and his storm boys out OC my blade guard, so that scores him this objective turn 1, which may be a little bit of a mistake, but it's not insurmountable. I think I still would prefer having this unit set up where it was on the objective ready to go. It's blocking some of his potential movement tricks on that side of the table, and also if I chose to, I could have used a deadly prize on this objective immediately to try and maybe get some mortal wounds in early. Overall, however, this was a concerning war. Being caged is really bad for my army, and I've now got a fair few orcs right in my face, and shutting down the 6 devastating Centurions early is a massive issue if I can't sort it out. If Noah managed to take out all of the incursors in shooting, he'd also have a charge into my 3-man squad of devastated Centurions here. Getting into my repulsor, that isn't so bad, as it can still shoot into combat, but if it gets destroyed, then I have to put my assault Centurion cargo even further back in my deployment zone, and they'd have to foot slog a lot longer. Fortunately for me, orc shooting did what orc shooting does, where you don't have access to sustained hits 2 on everything, and only managed to take out 3 incursors. That meant that the commandos had to charge into the remaining 2, and then couldn't pile into the Centurions. The repulsor also managed to survive on 4 wounds, knocking it down to its damage profile, but still up and running. With a couple of orcs taken out in the hit back, as well as the incursor mine, I had some room to maneuver my assault Centurions now. In my turn 1, I was not as tied up as Noah would have liked. I'd lost 1 Centurion in combat versus Zod and his Gretchen, but I'd also managed to kill a couple of Grots in the punchback, and it was easy enough to fall the Centurions back for the other units to take care of them. They're still in the war, so they have a 5 of invuln, making them a little bit tankier. My jump back units get into positions to charge the left flank Stormboys and Commandos, and flank the Zod Grot mosh pit, with my heavy intercessors getting a speedy 6 inches with their advance roll of a 1 to get some shooting in. Assault Centurions disembark to help clear the beast snaggers from the repulsor, and the incursors get onto the middle objective and start terraforming. I didn't expect this to work, but it forces Noah to deal with it. Drawing Cull the Horde and extend battle lines is also a very nice opening secondary hand. I can oath the Zod bomb and delete those Gretchen with the heavy intercessors and vanguard veterans, and then I can take the middle objective for extend battle line, so even if both flanks go terribly, I still have that. That 5-up invulnerable save does make orcs fairly rock solid, with my Centurions unable to destroy the commandos on their own. This was just a mistake of ordering which things I shot first. I should have fired these guys on my home objective first, because they're the ones who have a better line of sight. But it didn't really matter in the end, as the vanguard veterans cleaned them up in melee. JPIs didn't quite manage to take out the Stormboys, but as I now auto-see them, thanks to Shrike giving my jump intercessors an extra OC, that terraform fails. The Centurions help finish off the Beastie Boys, Zodgrod is all that's left on his own thanks to the vanguard veterans, and the Blade Guard make a blended mushroom soup out of the Stormboys on this objective. I'm now pretty clear of any more approaching orcs. The war is over, and I've got a lot of space to make plays now. The rest of the game plays out across the 3 center objectives, with Noah overpowering the Blade Guard and taking a stronghold of the right side. I took command of the left side, and we traded back and forth over the middle objective without a real solid victor. Noah takes it with some boys off my incursors. I take it back with a combination of vanguard veterans and heavy intercessors. He brings out the flash kits to play, which makes very fast work of what's left there, but they're put directly in the line of sight of my big Centurion squad. Although I have to say, that 4-up invulnerable save from the Mega Mech made chewing through this unit really tricky. My stranglehold on the left flank meant I could get assault Centurions involved, as well as bringing my repulsor up, who survived on a single wound despite a hero Stormboy's best efforts. It was eventually destroyed by a cheeky grenade. With that push, I could wipe out the flash kits and claim the middle objective proper, and with that space, I was now in position to get my Centurions all over the map to clear any remaining orcs. Noah's orcs were eventually wiped out with just a single Stormboy remaining in my deployment zone for a last minute behind enemy lines. The only models remaining on my end, though, were Shrike, a single load Vanguard veteran, Captain Falcon, who did an amazing job getting objectives as a single model, and 13 Centurions. Noah unfortunately only managed to take out 5 of them, and his plan of caging them in so we didn't have to worry about them had failed. And in the end, I got a scrappy victory, 79 points to 60. I do think the turn 1 war was the right play, but I think Noah should have just full sent it. Just flood the board so after I escaped the first wave, a second wave was ready to keep me locked and not give my junk pack units room to get out and stop actions and make space for my Centurions. Have the flash kits ready to go to draw a bead on the Centurions and bully me off the midboard. It might end up the same kills-wise, but he'd have more turns to rack up points. Maybe I'm way off the mark of that. I honestly don't know. I think this is a tough matchup for this orc list due to the lack of tools to deal with the Centurions. But even whittling down 1 or 2 more from each squad can reduce my output a fair amount. This game definitely shows off the power of my list if it is given space to get that bouncing around. If it can weather the initial hit and get units out to carve space, the damage output can snowball real fast. If you want to see what it looks like when the opposite happens, look no further than Game 2. After winning Game 1, I was happy to know that I'd at least match my 1-4 Super Major record. All I needed was one more win to reach my goal. However, that joy turned to fear as I realized that winning Game 1 meant that I had a chance to pair into 4 people who had previously taken me to the cleaners. Tui with his penitent sisters, Brett with his Castron heavy Admech, and also one of the best Admech players in the country, Adam, whose World Eaters had crushed me at the Super Major, who now had Blood Angels, and Reese, who was back with his Blood Angels again. And if I paired into him, it would be an identical rematch of the previous Winchester event, and we all know how that turned out for me. Fortunately, I managed to avoid all 4 of those potential rematches. Unfortunately, I paired into probably the worst matchup I could have ever gotten. Game 2 was against Conor's Dark Angels, and was the worst loss I've ever suffered in 40k. I've not played against Dark Angels before, so this was my first time experiencing the absolute brick shithouses that are Deathwing Knights and the Lion. 2 blocks of Deathwing Knights, a 6-man inner circle companions, characters, and the big man himself, Lionel Johnson, all backed up by some fast-moving JPIs, scouts, and infiltrators to keep things screened, and a big block of Stern Guard for some ranged power. Conor was using the Stormlance Task Force detachment, and even with 3 of the stratagems being exclusive to mounted and vehicle units, of which Conor had 0, the advanced charge is still a very strong rule that helps his slow, tough units get into my face and shut me down. Also, as this list doesn't have any real shooting, it makes my detachment rule functionally useless. If there's one thing the Screaming Ravens do not like, it's being locked up by tough melee bricks. This is the same map and mission as my previous game recap video, and I didn't want to have another game on this mission where I wasn't allowed to actually play. A lot of his melee weapons are damage 2, which is very good into Centurions as there's no wasted damage, and the Lion has a massive damage 4 profile. Both the Lion and Deathwing Knights are extremely difficult to kill. Deathwing Knights are still only T5, but a 2-up and 4-up with 4 wounds instead of the regular Terminator's 3 wounds, and they have -1 damage. Last cannons need to roll at least a 4 on the dice to get rid of 1. The Lion has a 3-up invulnerable save and is lone up when near a friendly unit. He also has the monster keyword, which is a surprise to me. It means that my assault centurions get their sustained hits to in melee, which would be good if I can get into a scrap with him, apart from the fact that the Lion fights first. I didn't want to get caged, and I know that my faster units would really struggle to kill anything. Whilst Conor does have advance and charge, they aren't that fast, but one issue I had was thinking that this was going to be like playing against Blood Angels, and I greatly overestimated Conor's speed here. The plan was to get a line of my weaker units that Conor would have to run into, and once he has run into those, that should leave him in positions where I can start teleporting my Centurions around to destroy him now he's out in the open more. I infiltrated my Blade Guard aggressively, hoping that if he goes first, he'll be slowed down having to fight them, and I could use the reactive move strat when he tries to charge to keep him from approaching too quickly before I got into position. There was an interesting interaction here, as Conor also has a Judicia with his inner circle companions. Neither of us wanted to charge the other's Judicia unit. Fights first means that whichever person charges in this situation, the other person gets a chance to fight first, and they could potentially use their Judicia to precision strike the opposing one. I'd be able to get my Vanguard veterans JPIs forward to try and make that line, and then try and get my natural expansion with the heavy intercessors, and then back everything up with devastated Centurions. As the mission is linchpin, I need to keep my home objective, so I used a deadly prize really early to ensure that I didn't lose hold of it. To say that this tactic didn't work would be an understatement. My biggest victory here was I did actually manage to kill a unit of Deathwing Knights and almost all the Stern Guard. But that was it. I played too aggressively. Not turn 1 overextended aggressive, but putting my Centurions too close to scary things. Teleporting Centurions managed to get into the midboard to get good shots off on the Stern Guard, but were within range of Conor's JPIs, which with 4 models did 4 mortal wounds on the charge to yeet one of the Centurions off the board like it was Smash Brothers. Deathwing Knights proved too robust for any of my big hits, not rolling high enough to effectively remove them, and then getting locked up in melee. And then there's the Lion. Oh my god, the Lion. 6 devastated Centurions, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, did exactly 2 wounds total to the Lion because of that 3-up save. I tried to get my assault Centurions in, but fights first meant that they just got slapped away by the Lion without a second thought. I kind of had to charge here, just to see if I got lucky and I had 1 stay alive to get some damage back, because otherwise the Lion just gets into my 6-strong devastated Centurions anyway. I will say though, even though the Lion was in my devastated Centurions on Conor's turn 3, my devastated Centurions do love to fight. They managed to go 3 fight phases with the Lion before being destroyed. They do really love a scrap. It was obvious the game was over for me even by turn 2, especially with the card draws. Conor didn't have great card luck either, his first round draws being pretty awful, spending his abundant command points because of Azrael to redraw for something good. My turn 1 draw couldn't have been worse. Area denial and marked for death, and that was followed by recover assets and bring it down. By turn 3, I was just in it for the Lion kill now. I charged anything I could. And even on turn 4, spent my last command points to interrupt in the fight phase just to try my luck with the incursors into the lion. They have sustained hits and are at least putting him onto his 3-up invuln, but all I managed to do was get one of them killed by the lion's shield parry. That early terrible card draw and subsequent turn 4 tabling meant that I scored the lowest score I've ever done. 25 to 99. I scored 4 secondary points. 3 for behind enemy lines because Shrike got into the corner just before JPI's mortared it to death, and 1 for a single raise banners, which is the first time I've ever managed to raise banners. I did at least stop the 100 though, with Conor needing a single raise banners to get that 100, but wasn't quite able to. So small victories. Across all of my tournament experience, it has become abundantly clear that armies like the one in Conor's list are basically the worst matchup my Centurions can go up against. Similar to Adam's World Eaters in the Super Major, locking me up with things that can take a punch is grim. Noah's Orks locked me up, but I can deal with them with a lot of the rest of my army. But the only thing dealing with things like 8-bound or Deathwing Knights are my Centurions, which can be easily shut down by getting into melee with them. And the damage 2 and 4 profiles with -1 damage and advance and charge with all of that means that the Stormlance Dark Angels are by far my worst matchup. But this was at least a fast game, giving us over an hour of time to rest before game 3. Game 3 on day 1 is always the toughest one. There's a shorter break between the rounds and your brain is starting to get a bit laggy at this point. Mistakes are more likely, your knees are requesting somewhat impolitely to sit down. So having the chance to sit and chat with Conor as the other games continued around us was at least one good thing to come out of the absolute shellacking I just received. You might think I forgot to say it, but I was saving it for this part of the story. Conor, like everyone else, is a really nice guy. Despite being quite socially awkward, I find it really easy to chat with my opponent at these events. The game itself gives you the chance to not only play the game, but also build some rapport with your opponent. After the game, that post-game debrief gives you the opportunity to move on to other conversations quite naturally. So you aren't exactly having to try and do the awkward small talk that usually comes with meeting new people. Even though this was a complete mauling, it was still a great learning experience, and it's always nice to get to hang out with awesome people like Conor. Conor would go on to win the entire event in a Game 5 nail-biter, which he won by a single point. So congratulations to Conor. It also marks me go 2 for 2 in playing the eventual winner at 5-game 40k tournaments. Clearly, I am the catalyst to victory, even if it's not my own. I've learned a lot from Game 2. Mostly that anything fast and tanky is my kryptonite, so I really hope that I can avoid any of those kinds of armies. And look, as long as I don't go against Dark Angel Stormlance again, I should be fine. I've never really seen many Dark Angels players, so what are the chances that there are 2 Stormlance Dark Angels players with the Lion at this tournament? I mean, come on. There's no way I'd be that unlucky. Oh, for Game 3 was against another Stormlance Dark Angels list. 2 in a row. This list also has the Lion. It also has 6 Inner Circle companions with the Judicia, but this list does not have any Deathwing Knights. So it is a little less chunky, instead going for a small contingent of Ravenwing Black Knights and a big unit of Hellblasters, supplemented with the standard Space Marine trimmings and a single 5-man Terminator squad. The other difference here is that the Judicia and the Inner Circle would not be walking, as they were riding around in a party bus, the Land Raider. Less toughness is good, but the Lion can probably just kill me on his own if I can't get rid of it early. Centurions did nothing to him. That 3-up invuln makes him extremely tough, and if he gets the lone up buff, I can't do anything until it's too late. My opponent was Tommy, who was a really nice guy and had just come off a hard-fought draw in round 2. It was so hard-fought, in fact, he barely managed to finish it on time and didn't have much of a chance to gather his thoughts before being thrust into Game 3. This mission was Scorched Earth with an extra objective on this corner deployment. I like this deployment. It works really well for my army as I can huddle up and choose one way or the other to focus my efforts. On this mission, I just need to hold 2 objectives with no points scored for holding more. So I could have my home objective and one other, which I selected as this one here, which I infiltrated my Blade Guard into. I honestly went into this game with a very simple game plan. Kill the Lion. I wasn't expected to win here. I just wanted revenge. Because of Scorched Earth being the mission and my abundance of fast units compared to Tommy's army, I just wanted to keep throwing stuff at the middle 2 objectives, gather my primary for my home and Blade Guard protected objectives, and hopefully put enough Centurions into positions to at least have a chance at the Lion. Tommy deployed quite conservatively with his scouts and infiltrators, with the infiltrators taking the home objective and his scouts taking a rooftop position in his deployment zone, not wanting to get them too far out. Tommy was going first, making this a nice 9-game streak of going second for me. I scout my incursors onto this middle objective here. I might give up Overwhelming Force or Storm Hostile Objective, but I wanted to use a Deadly Prize on it to try and be cheeky. I chose instead to use a Deadly Prize on the objective my Blade Guard had taken, because I thought if that was sticky, I could then get the Blade Guard moving into the midboard as well, making the incursor scout move entirely pointless. Either way, Tommy gets a decent start, bringing out the Lion with his jump pack intercessors, starting to get some movement down the far flank into this corner, and moving the Land Raider out to play to pick up a couple of Centurions that I left to expose. His card draw wasn't fantastic. Mark for Death, turn 1 isn't great against my army, and Overwhelming Force is doable, but not guaranteed. I don't want to speak for Tommy, but I think the game plan for him was to send the Bikes and Hellblasters into one corner, and his Land Raider and block of Inner Circle to the other, and have the Lion rip through the center. The Lion getting into my backline would spell disaster. It'd be game over, and without any backup, the flanks would be able to overrun and just pincer maneuver me. Even if I managed to take down the Lion in my lines, it might be too late if he shreds through enough Centurions. However, there is an overarching story to this game. It is one of fatigue and the law of averages. Remember, I am fairly fresh for a game 3, having had a nice long break between games, and I'd literally just played an army like this, so I knew what was coming. Tommy had just fought an arduous battle that ended in a tie, an extremely close game, immediately into a weird janky list of 18 Centurions, in game 3 near the end of a long day. That causes you to make mistakes, and Tommy made an extremely unfortunate error that turned the game on its head. After moving the Lion and the jump pack intercessors, Tommy wanted that overwhelming force and charged his jump pack intercessors into my incursors, and unfortunately did not manage to get them all. However, by doing so, the Lion is now no longer within 3 inches of any ally unit, and now it was exposed to my shooting. Tommy was using the jump pack intercessors as the Lion's shield, but then also wanted to use them to get points and to take the objective. And that critical oversight meant that he just removed that shield. But the Lion is still a tough nut to crack, and my Centurions aren't that well positioned. I can get 7 Centurions in line with him, but knowing that 6 did sweet fuck all to him against Conor, I wasn't fancying my chances. It turns out that 6 Centurions is not enough to kill the Lion. 7, however, is. This means I am justified in bringing so many Centurions. If you take all of the 3 up invulnerable saves that the Lion made between Conor and Tommy's game, you'd find that they match up with what you'd expect on average. The problem is that all of the low rolls went to Tommy and all the high rolls went to Conor. The Lion is killed turn 1. Losing Lionel Johnson turn 1 basically cost Tommy the game, and that's always an awful feeling. I've done it myself before. His plan hinges on the Lion being the middle bully, but by removing that threat, the link holding his 2 flanks together has now been shattered, severing his army in 2 with nothing to keep the middle of the board under control. Now, Tommy, to his credit, keeps his spirits high under pressure. I'd managed to get more jump units and incursors onto both middle objectives and started to burn the one close to my Blade Guard corner, knowing that Tommy would struggle now to get anything there to stop them. And if he managed to take out my Blade Guard in his turn 2, I'd still hold the other middle objective. I moved the repulsor up to get a shot at his Land Raider and did 1 damage, but it was in position to get out the Assault Centurions next turn to get involved and back up the Blade Guard. Tommy's turn 2. The plan is still the same. Take out those flanks. This was going to be tricky. The Land Raider takes out some more Centurions, and the Inner Circle get out of the van and charge into my Blade Guard. However, this is the same issue against Conor. Fights first takes priority, and in the fight phase, I take his Judicia out with my Judicia. Now, the Judicia itself only provides fights first to the unit it's in, but Inner Circle companions get -1 to hit whilst being led by a character. So whilst the Judicia was -1 to hit, it's still a lot of attacks, and 2 devastating wounds means that Tommy's Judicia is taken out. And that leaves my Blade Guard with an easier time into the rest of the companions. Tommy strikes back well, though, as my Blade Guard with Judicia is a character unit, and the Inner Circle has a very scary melee profile. So he does manage to take out 2 of the Blade Guard in an epic duel, which is enough to get Storm Hostile Objective. With the Lion down in the middle exposed, though, this spells the end for Tommy's Dark Angels. My Death Sense turn their sights onto the Land Raider and make quick work of it, and the Assault Centurions provide reinforcements to the Blade Guard and drill punch the companions into the ground. With the middle objective burnt, that frees up the jump pack intercessors and a squad of Vanguard veterans to wreak havoc in Tommy's deployment zone, taking out the scouts and starting to work through the intercessors, infiltrators, and eventually getting onto the heavy intercessors that are perched in the building. Infiltrators are great against 12-inch Chicago deep strikes, but that doesn't do anything against 12-inch strikes that are directly to your face head on. Also, trying to fight heavy intercessors on an objective with 1 damage is a lesson in futility. In the end, 1 stayed alive, hang a back and forth fight with a single Vanguard veteran, which led Tommy and I to play out this hilarious scene. Can I have that back? No. I teleported my big Devastated Centurions over to try and remove Azrael and the Hellblasters. But that 4-up invuln proved to be more than I'd bargained for, as I didn't do that much damage, and their shooting on death took out half the squad. The Apothecary then also brings one back, meaning that my damage wasn't exactly huge. After turn 3, Tommy knew he'd lost, so he went Centurion hunting. And I wasn't going to let him leave without a fight, slowly walking my Assault Centurions over to give him a proper scrap. Competitive or not, it's still a game, and we're here to have fun. So if Tommy wants to test his might against the wall of Centurion metal, I'm not going to say no. In the end, he managed to take out 10 out of 18, an admirable number considering his big hitters were gone. I had excellent card draw throughout, and this was my first tournament 100-point game to Tommy's 56. This game highlights something that my list excels at, and that's capitalizing on errors. If this list gets its foot in the door, it will blast that door off the hinges, get into your house, raid your fridge, block your toilet, and steal your cat before you can even work out what's happened. Armies which keep me from hitting that go button, that keep me from being able to get Centurions into space and uppy-downying them for kills, are the ones I do badly against. And I think Tommy, like Noah, made the mistake of not full sending. Again, I'm not a huge fan of telling others what they should have done. I don't want to come off as an arrogant like, oh, I won, so clearly I know what's best. You should have done this. It was so simple. Nor do I want to give advice that I think sounds good, but might actually be complete garbage. And also, because these are fairly local tournaments, it's likely I might play them again. And if I tell you my thoughts on how to beat me and you watch this and we have a rematch, you'll know how to win. So stop watching if you're going to... Wait, no, you've already watched most of the video. Continue watching. Do whatever you want. I'm not your mum. However, my experience tells me that against the Screaming Ravens, you have two choices. Full send or no send. You can't really fight me on multiple fronts, because if you do, I'll focus on one of those fronts, carve out space, and use that to leverage long-range firepower into the other fronts. If Tommy had sent the Land Raider and the Lion into the middle, then everything else away from my Blade Guard, that shuts me down completely. Jump Pack Intercessors and Vanguard Vets aren't beating fights first in a circle, and it had protected the Lion long enough for him to get involved. In that position, I have maybe one turn of Centurion shooting before you're in melee with them. Giving me more than that against your big hitters is what will defeat you in the end. But again, I might be way off on that front, to be honest. So let me know what you do with your army against my army in the comments below. And yes, this is a very obvious ploy to get you to give me information I can use against people in the future. I'm not subtle. I play 18 Centurions. Just tell me your secret. Tommy was a gentleman, and we had a great game with a lot of cinematic moments. Tommy kept his head up, even in the face of losing the line, and that's the kind of sportsmanship we should encourage. Even in defeat, you can still learn a lot and still have fun, or try something new without the pressure of it costing you the game. So shout out to Tommy for his attitude, especially for this being game 3. Really appreciate your positivity and a great time throwing Centurions into the Terminator meat grinder. So day 1 is over, and I'm at a 2-1 record. I've already hit my target of going 2-3. Even if I lose both of my day 2 games, this has been a successful tournament. It's time for day 2, and it begins with Alun and his Custodes. Alun is, I'm sure you've guessed by now, a really nice guy. Custodes is an army I don't have much experience against, and the mission, Purge the Foe, is a very tricky one, as killing more units than my opponent, when that opponent has so few very tough units, is going to be a challenge. However, for most of the rounds, I actually went beat for beat on the unit kills. Unfortunately, that was about the only good thing in this game. There isn't much to glean from deployment or anything. The lesson from this game is rather simple. Don't force it. If you try to force things, you'll only hurt yourself. Much like if you've ever been on the toilet battling against one of those life-altering dumps. Oh, bloody hell. I'm never going to say that line right. Fuck it, that'll do. I'm going to draw that later. God damn it. I'm going first in this game, which breaks my 9-game streak of going second. But it's been so long, I don't really know what to do going first. First couple of rounds were relatively close, trading a few things here and there for point scoring, and I tried to draw some of his units out to get my Centurions involved, but unfortunately, this would end up being my downfall. You see, we both played very cagey at the start, not trying to expose anything to each other. Like against Conor, I overestimated the speed of my opponent's army, and I was worried he'd get into my lines too quickly. So I tried to force some kills and get into position so that when he did come out to play, I'd be ready for him. But that turned out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, as the only way his Custodes got up the board so quickly from that point was because I'd left him things that he could charge. Had I just stayed back, he'd not really be able to do much. His only fast units was the bikes, and I didn't appreciate their power, so I left them pretty much unchecked, and gave Alun space to rapid ingress and rip my backline apart. I used my big 6 Devastators to take out his scary Draxus unit, but that left them exposed to a countercharge. Whenever I'm in a position where nothing is happening and both sides are playing cagey, I get nervous, and that makes me want to try and make something happen. Try and get my killy units killing. But the only thing I really did was make a bunch of unforced errors. Alun is a seasoned player, and watching him calculate his moves was fascinating, and that methodical style of play tends towards being more reserved. being reserved has got me caged in the past. I'm still at that point in my competitive career where I'm learning these overall lessons, but also trying to apply them in the right places. If this was Fast Blood Angels or World Eaters, for example, playing cagey would be bad. But as we're both playing slower, tougher armies, I can afford to not throw away my key units so soon, and instead wait, play it slow, and strike when Alun is forced to come out for a secondary mission or to try and take me off an objective. Purge the Foe is a one or more holding mission. As long as we block each other's attempts to take the middle objective, we will get the same amount of points. I needed to slowly pull Alun into traps where I can pounce with my Centurions, but instead I went on the offensive far too aggressively, and it was Alun who could pounce. Overall, it wasn't the worst loss though, 68 to 94. The primary got away from me, sure, but even with my army being whittled to a few scant Centurions, thanks in no small part to some horrific rolls, I still managed to get a lot on the secondary, scoring at least some cards each turn. A tough game against a tough opponent, but once again, a fun game that taught me a lot. So I'm 2 for 2 now, but the positive win rate dream is still alive. This has now been 3 very tough armored opponents in a row after my first game against unarmored but still relatively tough T5 Orks. I think it's time for a change. I think it's time for Screaming Ravens versus Aeldari. Round 3. This is essentially the Aeldari rubber match for me, having lost one and won one against them. And not only that, this is also 3 for 3 on Aspect Host. Game 5 was against Martin, who, you don't need me to tell you, was a super nice guy. He was actually the player who Tommy was battling to a tie in Game 2 before Tommy then played me. Martin's Aeldari army looks awesome with these wonderful green vehicles with vine details. Like a lot of Aeldari armies, but especially Aspect Host armies, the different colors from all of the different aspects give such a great feel to the army, showing off each different aspect's unique abilities that they bring. Martin's list is called Better Get Good or Get Dead, and yeah, that about sums up 40k, right? A fairly familiar array of Aeldari favorites here, but going heavy on the striking Scorpions with a big block of 10 and a Wave Serpent with a murderous Autarch. The Falcon transports the unit I'm most scared of, Fire Dragons and Fugan. If they get close to me, they will do some serious damage. Jane Zarin, the Banshees, the Baharoth Blues, and Likis round out the Phoenix Quartet, with Eldrad hanging around just to make sure that Martin didn't have to worry about command points. Deployment was an interesting one, a long, wide deployment with Taken Hold as the mission. Martin deployed first with his smaller striking Scorpions unit taking the center field. I took the right side with my Blade Guard, and Martin responded with Rangers on the left, very similar to the Orc game in round 1. Martin deployed then mostly centrally, ready to take the battle either way, and I decided, you know what? You can have that side of the board. I only deployed 3 Centurions there, and that was only really because I was running out of safe spaces on the middle and right sides of the board, and I knew I could pick them up if needs be. My Repulsor also hangs to the left because I know it has the speed to get across and drop off the Assault Centurion cargo if needed, and in case Martin tries to flip the board by sending everything the other way, there's something there that can do a little bit of blocking. I get the first turn again. I scout things forward as much as I can with the striking Scorpions there. Cleanse and Sabotage are my cards, which is quite a nice draw. I get my Vanguard Veterans both moving towards the center with my incursors. My other incursors hide behind this wall, and as the objective just toes out beyond this ruin on these sides, I can cleanse here as well. My Blade Guard start Sabotage. If they can survive, I get this, but I know I'm going to have some very nasty things coming for me to stop that. I want to start fighting over the middle of the board and try to just match primary. We're both likely to hold our chosen side objectives, so it's all about the middle one. I have my remaining jump back intercessors and a lot of Centurions backing up my Blade Guards, so if he wants to take them off that point, he's welcome to try. We'll have a lot of las cannons waiting to send a strongly worded letter to him. I take the Scorpions out with my Vanguard Veterans, and Martin responds in kind, taking the fight right back to me with the Warp Spiders. Likis and the Wave Serpent all swiftly taking hold of it, with the battle focus stuff allowing his Wave Serpent to get into literally the most annoying position he could have possibly been. It's managed to get on the objective, but without giving any good lines of sight, which is impressive seeing how bloody big this thing is. Warp Spiders make mincemeat out of all but a single incursor. The striking Scorpions get out the Wave Serpent to take on the Vanguard Treasurers. Unfortunately for Martin, whilst he's been rolling pretty well so far for saves and attacking, his striking Scorpions seem to take the striking part literally, as they were very opposed to actually putting the effort in to get into combat. Martin needed to roll a 3 on the charge, and he rolls a 3, which gets him in, but as the unit is so large, he had to disembark around the Wave Serpents. Not all of the striking Scorpions could actually be involved in the battle, slowly dragging their heels into battle reluctantly to slice up 3 out of the 5 Vanguard Veterans. Being locked in combat here was annoying, as I wanted to fall them back, but an unfortunate Battle Shock test said no, so I couldn't use my Centurions to blast them to smithereens. I could try and Desperate Escape, but Martin could use a stratagem to make that even worse for me, so instead I left them there to fight it out. On the right side of the board, Warp Spiders tried to take out as many Blade Guards as they could before Jane Zar arrived to finish them off. They only managed to take one Blade Guard out, which is not really that good, as Judicia with fights first means I'd have a chance to fight the Banshees before they fight me. I used my Judicia to try and behead Jane Zar, but didn't quite manage it. But the remaining Blade Guard make quick work of the Banshee Queen's entourage. But Jane Zar is one of the best combatants in the 40k universe, and she alone managed to kill the remaining 2 Blade Guard and leave my Judicia on just 2 wounds remaining. That at least gives me sabotage and enough OC to continue to hold this objective for the primary. My turn 2, and I teleport my Centurions on the left side of the board from where they are all the way to here. Hey, look, it's more movement than they would normally get, all right? Martin had just brought his Falcon around to try and get it moving, but a combination of my Repulsor and these Centurions popped it, and the Fire Dragons would have to walk the rest of the way, which is a great relief for me. On the other side, the Judicia's pistol misses, but the Jump Back Intercessors and their Mortal Wound charge finishes off Jane Zar before she gets a chance to use her fights first. And the Centurions clean up the Warp Spiders without much of an issue. It's 6 Devastating Centurions versus 5 Warp Spiders. To call this overkill would be an understatement. In the middle, I put Oathmoan on Lickers, and the Assault Centurions, and a very cheeky single incursor, destroyed her and her Spiderlings, and take the center objective of Storm Hostile Objective. Shrike comes down in the very back corner to try and get all 3 zones for recover assets. Baharoth and his Hawks are in the sky, and I assumed that with their 6-inch Deep Strike, they would easily kill Shrike, but that's fine. I still get mini recover and it'll make the Hawks come down in a suboptimal place. In the fight phase, though, the Striker Scorpions did get something back. Easily finish off the Vanguard veterans, and with the way the Wave Serpent had illegally parked, Martin struggled, but did manage to get just enough of the Moody Teenager Scorpions to block my Storm Hostile Objective score. I didn't hold it, but at least neither did Martin, so primary stayed consistent. Martin's turn 2, and he is now a little bit on the back foot. The left side objective is safe. He doesn't need to worry too much about that, and he still has a lot of Striking Scorpions and the Wave Serpent to attack the middle, and now with Fugan and his Fire Dragons nearby, they are still quite quick and can get into range to protect that middle objective. Most of my remaining units are slow, with only my JP Eyes and Shrike off in the corner having any sort of speed. Oh, by the way, this 14mm marker I got as part of the Mandrake skill team is representing Shrike. Shrike likes to go into corners, and I've knocked him off the table a fair few too many times, and I've started putting this marker there to represent him instead. Even still, in my game against Tommy, I put him on top of a ruin to represent where he was, so I didn't have to try and finagle him into the ruin, and I knocked him off there too. He was fine, but still, he's so stealthy, I keep forgetting he's there, and he keeps getting slapped. Speaking of Shrike getting slapped, Baharoth's boys do indeed make very quick work of him, dropping down to mortal him and finishing him off with Baharoth's pistol. The Scorpions roll a 2 to get into the Centurions after shooting that last incursor, and despite their slow walking pace, their sword striking pace is unmatched. He takes back control of the center before getting back into the van using the strat Skyborn Sanctuary. My turn 3, and it's time to finish this. Focusing my efforts on that one flank has let me carve out space that I talked about earlier. I can drop my 3 Centurions right here in direct line to the Fire Dragons and the now Oath-Momented Wave Serpent. My 6-man Devastating Centurions can aim their payload at Baharoth with Strike from the Shadows, allowing the missiles to kill every single one of the Super Hawks and do 2 damage to Baharoth before the last cannons come in and take out Baharoth's remaining 3 wounds by doing 22 damage total. If the Warp Spiders were overkill, that was apocalyptic. Potentially, Martin could have still killed Shrike and kept the Hawks alive by dropping down a bit further away, but he needs to be at least within 12 inches of Shrike to do any damage. I've written this part in the script, and obviously I'm now recording the audio, but this is a note to Futureport while I'm editing, and I made the map and stuff. Work out if that was possible. And don't spend the time making an image of you looking mad at me, Futureport. I know what you're like. This is a long video. It's almost 50 minutes of the recording so far. You haven't got time to prat about and doing. Just give us a yes or no. Would it have worked? Yes. But actually, no, not really. Your issue is that, yes, you could have... Where's my pen? The issue is you could have hidden here and been in range of Shrike still, because you only really needed Baharoth and maybe a couple of Super Hawks just for safety. That would have kept you safe from here and probably also screened out this area. Problem is, I could then just teleport over here because it's round 3 and I can come on here or over here and still get the lines of sight onto all of this and still blow you up. The Wave Serpent might be more safe because I wouldn't be able to teleport these guys, but then I can always just do what I did there, which is charge. And then this does this. And then I just kind of scribble all over it because I've been editing this video for a fucking long time and I'm getting really sick of it. After scooping the swooping Hawks, the 3-man squad do a decent chunk to the Wave Serpent, but not enough to do some nice saves. But they do remove Fugan and the Fire Dragons. Fugan is down, but a 2+, he gets back up. Martin rolls a 1. I'm telling you, the dice, they just know. The dice in this game have been relatively even, with both of us spiking at places and not so much in others, but overall, fairly even on both sides. But as soon as the game starts to tip away from you, the dice just know, and they will decide, hey, you aren't winning this one, mate. Let's just make it quick. This happened to me in the last game against Alun, where the game was slowly getting away from me, but my turn 3 dice rolling was abysmal just to speed up the demise. Nice Sentient. I don't know what else to tell you. And this also means that I'm 2 for 2 for disappointing Fugans. I guess I just give Aeldari players a debuff when they play me. My Assault Centurions, who had struggled to make much headway since deployment due to this piece of ruin and their pathetic 4-inch movement, finally managed to build up some momentum with all that weight and get a great charge roll to finally finish off the Wave Serpent. Despite rerolls, I barely got any 6s for the sustained hits too, but it was still enough to pop it like a piñata and drop up my Striking Scorpion prize. And at this point, we talk out the rest of the game. The Striking Scorpions do their fair share of Centurion hunting, but I've taken out so many of Martin's key units that even his safe objective on the left is only being held by Rangers. The Wind Riders over there had already been destroyed trying to do some objectives, which left them poking out against my Repulsor. I could easily pick up my big 6-man Devastators, getting the pointing at his home field holders, and delete them. It'd only be turn 5 that I'd actually get onto that point, so even with them gone, Martin still at least scores decent primary as he holds 2 until the final hour because of that sticky objective. JPIs, Repulsor, whatever else wants to have a go can get into the Striking Scorpions, I can fall back the Centurions, and whether or not it's destroyed by Desperate Escape, it doesn't really matter, as I have enough firepower to easily take them out. Or I just keep the Centurion there and then Tank Shock and JPI Mortals the remainder of the Scorpions. I've got units that can make it to his home and get my final cards, which include full Established Locus and secure my victory, 92 to 57, giving me an overall record of 3 wins and 2 losses. This Screaming Ravens list works surprisingly well. I could do the 70-point swap to get the Combi Lieutenant, but I don't see the point. I really found those heavy intercessors to do well, and the 4-up on the Vanguard veterans, although that wasn't a huge advantage into some of the heavier melee hitters, was still really good. There is a chance I'll go back to using Inferno Pistols for that little bit of extra punch, but for right now, I want to keep the list exactly the same and instead work on my gameplay. The biggest changes in my game here were less reliance on trying to uppy-downy every turn, and instead leveraging things like a Deadly Prize, which I started the tournament using a lot and slowly started using less as the games went on. I think I was just excited to try out my new toy, and by new toy, I mean toy I always had access to but never used because I forgot about it or was too stupid to know what it did properly. But that is one of the nice things about playing 5 games in quick succession, is that you learn a lot over those games very quickly. So now I've got some good experience on when to spend my limited command point resource. By keeping the list exactly the same, I can work on solidifying my game plan, which is to focus on one area of the board, using my Blade Guard to get early control of that area and backing them up with heavy hitting Centurions that can clap back against anything that wanted to run into my Solid Steel sword and board wall. After I carve out that space, I can leverage that area to start using my teleport shenanigans then and get line of sights that way, instead of trying to get those lines of sight across the board early. Incursors, JPIs, Vanguard veterans either try to run interference or get my points, and Shrike on his own is a great unit, even if he doesn't kill anything all tournament. But there is still flexibility against some matchups if I want to put Shrike into a unit for some more heavy punching with rapid ingress. Let me know your thoughts down below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this, go ahead and like and subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. If you want to support me going to more tournaments and making more of these report recap type things, then please become a member or patron like all of these lovely lads and lasses. Your support helps the future of this channel and gets you access to the super secret supporters club. But we have nightmares that we're being chased down by Lionel Johnson and his 3-up invulnerable save, and oh my god, he's rolling the foot 6s. Oh god, oh fuck, get away from me. Ah!